Hello, and welcome to The Money Trench, the music industry podcast with me, Mark Sutherland. We're back from our summer break and raring to dive back into the music industry. And we started with a bang with our first anniversary TMT Tuesday showcase last week in association with App Venue, the leading live events platform for touring artists, venues and festivals. The gig at the Victoria in Dalston featured star-making sets by Indoor Foxes, Bieber and Jolay in partnership with our friends at Fierce Panda. The next gig is on September the 29th, so keep your eyes on the TMT socials and newsletter for full details. The Money Trench is supported by SOUNDON. SOUNDON is TikTok's all-in-one music distribution and promotion platform for artists and labels. Go to soundon.global to find out more and check out the SOUNDON Track of the Week in the TMT newsletter. And the Money Trench is also supported by TIXEL, the honest ticket exchange and waitlist helping artists own their audience and protect fans through tells. Go to TIXEL.com to find out more and check out the TIXEL Gig of the Week in the TMT newsletter. And we support Earth%, the music industry's climate foundation. Check earth%.org for all the details. And this week, we're joined by two leading lights of the UK music industry. Their company, Big Life, is involved with artist management and music publishing, and over the decades, it's been behind artists with 40 million album sales and over 100 top 40 hits, including the likes of the Verve, Snow Patrol, Kate Nash, and Skunk Anansi. Now celebrating Big Life's 40th anniversary, please welcome MD Kat Kennedy and co-founder Tim Parry.
Hi, happy to be here.
Hey, Mark.
Hello, welcome to the show. How's your music week been?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. It's actually quite nice that it's quite quiet. I haven't had any shows, which has been probably the first week this summer. So It's a bit of a relief, but yeah, all good.
I thought you'd be knee-deep in festival season.
Well, I have been. So that's why it's a relief. And I've just seen that it's actually just started raining for the first time. So this weekend might be the first festivals that actually see some rain. It's been a remarkable summer in terms of the weather.
Yeah, just in time for a muddy Reading. How about you, Tim?
I am going to a festival a week on Saturday, which will be my first one, as I've been on holiday for 2 weeks and got back Monday. So I've had a very unmusic business type of week, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get hold of one of my artists, as it's urgent, but that's taken me about 3 weeks.
Okay. Can you tell us which one?
That will be telling, sorry.
Okay, fair enough. If you're one of Tim's artists, get in touch now, please. But great stuff. Let's see what the rest of the music industry has been up to with our roundup of the latest biz headlines. And our first story comes from Music Business Worldwide, which reports that BMG has become the latest music company to do a deal with controversial AI platform Suno. Suno is still being sued by the likes of Universal and Sony, of course, but the deal with BMG establishes a strategic framework covering its recorded music publishing repertoire. BMG artists and songwriters will be able to opt in to the arrangement if they want to. Kat and Tim, you obviously represent a lot of artists. What do you make of this deal?
I think the idea of opting in is at least the best approach rather than having to opt out. I think if an artist wants their music to be sort of used in an AI situation, then I think that's sort of up to them, but I'm very scared about the whole AI thing, to be honest, especially the environmental impact of it, which is absolutely frightening. But
yeah. No one really talks about that, do they? But,
no, it is frightening. The water usage, the electricity usage is off the scale, and I think, unfortunately, the people behind these companies don't seem to really care about that. So anyway, Kat's got some good recent research on AI, which I think is brilliant.
What have you got for us, Kat? He's picked it up now. Better be good. Better be mind-blowing.
He has picked it up now, and I'm going to get in loads of trouble because the person involved told me not to tell this story to anyone. So I'm now telling it on a podcast. But I had a relative visiting over the weekend and said, "Oh, I've found some really great new artists on Spotify that I really like, but I've got a bit of a suspicion that some of them might be AI." And it turned out all 5 of them were AI. And it's pretty shocking because, she had listened to these artists and found the lyrics emotional, and had looked them up and found that these artists had interviews and had other things that made it seem like they were real artists, and it was just kind of a real kind of wake-up call for me, thinking that was still quite far off, that people would still really be able to tell, but I don't think it's that far off at all.
That is slightly scary, but I don't know if you have anyone signed to BMG, but has any label or publisher asked you or your artists for your views on doing one of these deals?
No. I don't have anybody signed to BMG, but no, I think it's really interesting that obviously the artist community is the most important thing here, and it feels once again like the tech companies are dealing directly with the labels, and I don't think artists are generally being consulted. We would obviously love to see a lot more transparency in this. As Tim says, the opt-in here is really key, but I would be so interested to know how that's going to work in practice, because obviously they've got a huge catalogue, lots of writers, lots of artists. It'd be really interesting to see how that's going to be policed.
Yeah, I mean, it's always seems a bit worrying to me that the sort of people whose work these deals are being based on are never actually asked about it. So you've got kind of no idea what's happening.
Yeah, and what is the deal going to be? What's it worth? It's very frustrating, I think, for artists, to know that their music could end up anywhere, and they don't. In the moment, they don't know what they're going to earn from it anyway. And
is there a settlement for previous use? Because that would normally be the case with this sort of deal.
There could be a huge settlement. Yeah. If there's that much AI out there, which apparently we're into the sort of millions of songs, surely that's a lot of settlement, even on a small sort of amount per use, as it were. But
well, we'll see. And can either of you see AI becoming a significant revenue stream for your artists in the future?
It depends on the deal, doesn't it? It's a bit like, what's a revenue stream for streaming? No one really had much influence on that, did they? The artists never had a say in it at all.
Too true. Too true. Well, at least we're not repeating the mistakes of the past.
Always. The music business always seems to devalue our music. It seems to be going back 20, 30 years. It seems to be a recurring pattern. Going back to CD, when CD started dropping in price, when, for example, video games kept their price, as it were, and suddenly, and then you get iTunes, someone decided it was 99 cents or whatever, and then the whole thing is, and then Napster, and then the whole thing has just become completely crazy, and and the music industry has got a lot to answer for on behalf of artists, because the music is now considered free, basically.
Yeah, well, we might get into some of that in later on in this podcast.
I know we will. Yeah.
But for the meantime, sure let's look at our next story, which comes from Variety, which reports that Ellie Goulding is suing her former management company, Tap Music. The singer claims that Tap's Ben Mawson and Ed Millett failed to disclose to her that Tap's parent company was partially and then fully owned by Live Nation, creating a conflict of interest when doing deals with Live Nation companies. Tap has yet to respond to the suit. Kat and Tim, you probably don't want to get into the specifics here, but have you ever been sued by one of your artists?
Luckily, never.
That's impressive. Over 4 years.
Yes, we've been sacked by a few, but never sued. I think it cost them too much money to do that.
Okay, well, that's probably a powerful deterrent. But Big Life is also owned by a larger company these days, Reservoir. Did you tell all your artists about that deal?
Some of them. I don't think we needed to, because I think it's different from the Tap situation, because we can't see any conflict of interest. And even if we do a publishing deal for an artist with Reservoir, obviously the lawyer has to establish that with the artist that there's no conflict of interest. So there's full transparency there with us.
Yeah, but as you say, split with a few artists over the years. Is that always a messy situation? Does it sort of always cause conflict?
I don't think it's always. I mean, I think obviously, we've had situations where we've been sacked, and it's heartbreaking a lot of the time, especially when you've worked really hard and you believe it, and if it's a surprise, then that's awful. But I remember when I first started, Jazz always said, you're not a proper manager until you've been fired. You definitely learn a lot from those situations. But I definitely try and approach management relationships now by assessing on a kind of regular basis if we're still the right person for each other, because I think there's always been a thing in management where you keep going until you either get fired or you die. And I don't think it needs to be like that. I think, sometimes you just get to a point where, you've had some success together, but maybe they want to go in a direction that you don't, it's not your area of expertise. And, so I've sort of the most recent kind of clients I've parted company with has been more that, someone else is probably the right person to take them on to the next phase of their career. So, it's always sad, parting company when you've worked really hard on something. But sometimes I think it can just be the right move for both of you. It doesn't always have to be a negative thing.
Sometimes it's a relief as well. And I won't go into details, but I could do. Yeah, when an artist, I think there's two things. When an artist is sort of reluctant to do certain things and does things that I think are disrespectful to their fans, which one artist I'm not going to mention were responsible for that sort of situation, then you just think this is not right. And the other thing that is annoying is if an artist has got less drive than you have as a manager, in which some artists come to a management company because they think that once they do that, everything's going to work out. Whereas nowadays, especially with social media, the responsibility is so much on the artist to start things off, especially to start things off at the beginning.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk about that a bit more as well, I expect, later on. But our final story comes from Music Ally, which takes a look at the latest media report into the music industry. The consultancy firm claims music retail value will pass $131 billion in 2033. That's up from $74.3 billion in 2025. By then, it predicts India will be the world's third largest country for music subscribers, behind only China and the USA. Kat and Tim, this sounds like good news. Your artists are going to be rich.
I think the issue is how much is actually going to filter through to the artists, because these next markets, India, Middle East, for example, is a big market. And I know Reservoir have got their own sort of people there, and they're sort of exploring that market with a certain amount of strength. But the problem is actually getting the money back. And obviously India, a Spotify subscription in India is about a fifth, I think, of what it costs everywhere else. So yeah, it's getting bigger, but obviously it's got to get really big to get to those figures. I think it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, streaming has really opened up global markets, hasn't
Yes.
it, compared to the physical era. How much revenue do you actually see from places like India, China at the moment?
Very little.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got to say very little.
Is that because your artists don't stream there, or is it because the money's just not
A bit of
enough?
both, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you obviously need a certain type of artist that's going to travel in terms. I would imagine that pop artists, the pure pop artists, will probably stream better in India or the Middle East rather than the sort of indie type band or a singer-songwriter. That's my feeling, but that's just a feeling. I don't know the figures, to be honest.
I've actually got an artist going to China in October, which is the first time that any of my management clients have gone. So it's been a great learning experience for me, and really, really exciting to have an act that can tour in that market. I've started working with a band called Boa, and they had this tour booked in before I started working with them, and so it's been a really interesting thing, because obviously everything is different there. The social media networks are different, the methods of distribution are different, so it's been really fascinating, and I'm really hoping that this will be the first of many and opening up that market to us.
Yeah. Are you going to get to go out there with them?
I'm not, I don't think, because they'd already done all the visas before I was involved. But hopefully, if they go back, I'd love to. Yeah.
Okay. And Kat, we had one of your artists, Kate Nash, on the podcast a while back.
You did?
Who was being fairly forthright about the lack of money she makes from streaming. Is that a problem across the board for artists?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, Kate is brilliant because she stands up for artists who don't have as much of a voice and as much of a platform as she does. I think a lot of the point that she's making is, she's able to do what she does because she did have an extremely successful first record. And so, even on the amount she makes per stream and on her deal, she has a good revenue stream, which enables her to kind of be bold and make decisions and do what she wants to do. But her point is, if Kate Nash, who's working in Nando's now, is trying to start out, how are they going to make enough money to be able to do it if they don't have an independent revenue stream? So, I think Kate's amazing in that she kind of stands up for a lot of other people on this. But yeah, I mean, she's not afraid to say how it really is.
That's It's the understatement of the podcast so far. But all right, well, we'll see what happens with that. Thanks, Kat and Tim. And don't forget, for even more music industry insight, sign up for the TMT newsletter at themoneytrench.com and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn and Facebook. With big thanks to our socials team, Deviate Digital. But now it's time to talk to this week's guests, Kat Kennedy and Tim Parry of Big Life. 40 years of Big Life. Kat, you weren't there at the start. Tim, you were. Did you ever expect it to last this long?
To be honest, no, I didn't. I didn't really have a plan when we started. It was just like a series of things that happened. You know, I started off. I don't know if people know, but I was in a couple of bands that Jazz Summers managed, and I was always the organizer in the bands, and I did the hiring and the firing and as much of the sort of organisation as anyone in the band can do. And then, so I had that sort of built up that relationship with Jazz. And then when I stopped being in a band, which was probably a good idea for my career generally, we formed Big Life. I'd been fired by the first artist that I managed, which was the March Violets in early 80s. And Jazz had just been fired by Wham because of the whole Sun City situation that was a bit unfortunate. And we were both sort of, I don't know, we just got together and said, let's do it. Let's start a company. Big Life, I think Jazz was macrobiotic at the time, and that sort of translates to Big Life. That's why we got the name, which is nice. I think it's a good name. And we started in 1986 and it went from there. Yeah.
I mean, not many companies last 40 years in the music industry. What's been the secret to your success, do you think?
I think, working with good artists and with good songs. I mean, the basics of music industry to me was always find the good artists with good songs, and make good records and build it from there. And I think we did that over the years, and we were lucky enough to work with some fantastic artists, and I think along the way we sort of started working with younger people like Kat, Colin Roberts, Claire Kilcourse, who have grown into these amazingly talented managers. So it's sort of, the business has sort of developed by our hires, as it were, the people that we got involved in the company. And who have now taken it over in a very positive way. So I think it's a combination of good people, good artists and good music.
Kat, when you started, I mean, you started and you haven't left. This is the only job you've ever had.
Pretty much, yeah. I started in 2006. It was the first. I was looking for a job in music PR, which I'm glad I didn't get. Management suits me much better.
But when you came here, did you sort of think, oh, this is successful because of this? It's obviously a good place to work as you've stayed this long.
Yeah, I mean, I was just excited by the music. I came pretty much straight from university. I'd been doing student radio. I'd been going to see a bunch of bands that I loved, like Snow Patrol and the Futureheads and Badly Drawn Boy, and suddenly I was then working for their management company. It was very exciting, but I have to say I didn't think I'd last a year because I was terrified of jazz. So at that point I would never have said I would be here 20 years later.
Okay, well, you weren't alone in that, I don't think. But I mean, the music industry has changed a lot in 40 years, Tim, hasn't it? So
yes, I think Jazz used to have this saying, which we still use, which is get the music right and the money comes. And I think that was our philosophy, and that sort of did for us really well over the years. But I think nowadays it's almost like get the social media right and the money comes. And I think that's the difference for me. And I do find it quite frustrating, even though I'm a sort of bit distant from it now, but I still find it frustrating that it's not, you can make a great record, but you can go, that sounds like a hit. In the old days, we'd make something like The Only Way Is Up with Yaz, and we go, that's number one. We'd have a meeting, play the record on a little beatbox and go, that's the number one record. And it was. And all around the world with Lisa Stansfield, you go, that's the number one record. And it was. It's just, the fact is now you can hear a great record, but you've got no idea what's going to happen to it. It's because it seems to be, there's more music than ever. I mean, literally, without AI even, there's like hundreds of thousands of tracks being streamed every week. So you've got much more competition. And then also, it's sort of, a good record isn't necessarily enough. Every young artist can make a good. I mean, the amount of good music out there is fantastic. You listen to Six Music, for example, and I'm thinking, I like that, but you just don't know if any of them are going to go anywhere. You know, it's a different situation. And I don't want to sound like an old grumpy old music business person, but
that's normally my job. But yeah, I mean, does that mean that the job of being a manager, being a publisher, because you do publishing as well, don't you? Has that changed in parallel to the changes you're talking about?
I think it's inevitable that if you hear some good music, probably the first thing you'll do is to see if they've got anything going on social media or anything going on Spotify or any of the Instagram, TikTok, etc., which is a little bit feels a little bit wrong. You should be going, that's a great piece of music, let's put it out and it's going to happen. And I think now it's not like that, and that's so you have to adjust a little bit to that.
Yeah, I think the shift has been that we've now had to move to making sure that every client is a sustainable business in and of itself, whereas previously the kinds of money that was being made by the ones that were successful meant that you could take a punt on something that you really believed in, and we used to do that really regularly. Tim and Jazz had incredible gut feeling for like what made a hit record, and so there would be we used to have lots of developing artists, but we still obviously love doing that, and breaking clients is one of the most exciting things about it. But I think we've really had to shift to looking at everything we do and go, how do we make each business around each artist work in and of itself so that the business is kind of more sustainable going forward.
And how hard is that to do? Because obviously we've talked about streaming not delivering a huge amount of money, particularly at the start of people's career. Touring seems to be getting harder and harder, certainly if you're not at the top end. How hard is it for people to make a living these days?
Yeah, I think it is really challenging, but we work with clients whose business comes from lots of different areas. I work with a band called We Are Scientists, who are just so funny and clever, and their merch is so brilliant that they have a really sustainable business through that and through the fan base that is still growing. So bands like that are always coming up with new ideas and new ways to sort of excite their fan base are always going to do well. And fortunately for us, we work with clients that that do have a decent live business, but it is it's harder and harder when you're making less and less on the recorded music side. And obviously I'd point you to any interview that Kate Nash has done, because she talks incredibly eloquently about that and how that how that impacts what you're doing. But they were always told that they would make their money on merch and touring has become really expensive as well. So I think when we talk about these sort of massive amounts of money that are coming in, that's a lot of the companies are making. It's about trying to work out how to actually make that ecosystem work, because at the moment I don't think it really does.
Yeah, I mean it's seems very hard to break an act, and obviously you guys have broken quite a few over the years. Is it still as tough as it's ever been, or have we slightly turned the corner, do you think?
I think it's tougher. I mean, I remember, something like LaRue, I can't remember, what year was LaRue? It was not that long, to me it's not that long ago, but I remember we got the demos, we got a deal, and in the charts within about 8 months or something crazy like that. That just doesn't happen, it was like, that doesn't happen anymore, it's just fact of life.
Yeah. Well, is there anything going to change that, or is this the situation now for the music industry?
I can't see it changing, because we're not suddenly going to get less music, especially with AI stuff. We're going to get more music inevitably, which sort of dissipates the effect, dissipates the earnings power from streaming. Obviously, the more artists there are, the less money there is to go around. The big artists tend to dominate, as you know. Unfortunately, it's going to be hard. Yeah. Going to be hard.
All that said, the company does seem to be on a bit of a roll at the moment. Kat, you manage Kate Nash, as we say, who seems to be having a career resurgence. How have you managed that?
Do you know what? Kate is just an absolute dream to work with. I started managing her when she came back from LA. She'd sort of left the music industry for a while to act. She was in a Netflix show called Glow, but she had a record that she'd made that was absolutely brilliant. But she basically didn't have a team. I was introduced to her by her UK agent, Jamie Wade. but other than that, she didn't really have a team here. And so one of the things that I've sort of done with her is just put good people around her. And it doesn't sound that complicated, but it's been absolutely brilliant building that team. She works with Kill Rock Stars as the label, who are just so supportive, so artist friendly, and they support her activism just as much as they support her music. And so they've been really great partners, and all of her promo team are brilliant. And Kate is just one of those people who is going to do it. She comes to me with ideas of things that she wants to do, but a lot of the time she's already put them in place. So my job is to just try and make the world as safe as possible for her to kind of make the bold moves that she wants to make. And really, it's not that complicated. It's just been about streamlining her business, making sure that everything makes sense. And she is really smart. She's a smart businesswoman as well as an incredible artist. And so it's just been a real privilege to see things going so well for her over the last couple of years.
One of those bold ideas was her joining OnlyFans.
Yes.
Did you anticipate the amount of attention that was going to get?
No.
That was a very long pause.
Well, it's an interesting one, because I was actually on bereavement leave when this happened, but she phoned me up and she said, I know you're off, but there's something I've got to tell you. And she'd already launched it. She was on this tour in America, which was costing a huge amount of money, and she was having to make some really tough decisions. And it was almost a joke on the tour bus of what, I bet I'd be making more money selling pictures of my arse than doing this tour. But what was absolutely spectacular about all of it was just that she's been able to shine such a light on that cost of touring crisis in a way that I don't know if any other artist has been able to. And, she'd been talking about this stuff for ages, but until she did the OnlyFans, she wouldn't have got on Lorraine. She wouldn't have got on daytime TV, all the places. Suddenly every media outlet wanted to talk to her.
We'd have still had her on TMT.
Of course she would. But, it was punk rock as hell and really awesome. But it shone a real light on the issue, and it still is. But also the other thing that it's enabled her to do is it's enabled her to really invest a lot more in her own creativity, because all of the money that she makes on OnlyFans, she puts into working on her music. We've got a record that she's working on at the moment, and the deal is going to be really interesting because she's putting loads of her own money into it, and that's something that we've been really, really pleased that the label Kill Rock Stars have been very supportive in. But it's going to enable our team, who if they're a label that don't necessarily have the biggest marketing budget, they now have a really big marketing budget that they can work with, and it's really, really exciting. So it's one of those amazing things that just came from a small kind of chat on the tour bus, and then it just went massive. So it was brilliant.
Fantastic. And you also co-managed Skunk Anansi with another former TMT guest, Jeremy Lascelles. But they're also hitting new heights. You've sort of you seem to have managed to crack this, how to get people back to the top. How do you do it?
That's brilliant.
It's because she's a good manager.
Well, that's very kind, thank you. But yeah, it's a really fortunate situation for me because Jeremy, who had known Skunk Anansi for years, when they were looking for a new manager, they'd had the same manager for their whole career, a woman called Lee Johnson, who retired. So, big shoes to fill, someone who'd been with them for all that time. And Jeremy had known them since the 90s as well. And when he got the opportunity to manage them, he got in touch with me, and actually he didn't get in touch directly with me. He called Tim and asked his permission to ask if I would co-manage him, a bit like Tim was my dad or something. But what an absolute privilege to be able to step onto that team with a really solid bunch of people. They are an incredible artist. Skin's amazing, the band is amazing, but back to what Tim said, they just made a great record. They really wanted to push themselves out of their comfort zone, so they looked for a producer who could help them do that, and they worked with Dave Sitek, and The Painful Truth is just a fantastic record, so that makes our job a lot easier.
Yeah,
it's interesting that we've got very strong female artists, very strong female artists. We've got obviously Orla Gartland, we've got Kate, Nash, we've got Skin, Liz Lawrence. I'm really proud of that, and also a very female-dominated staff here as well. It's just Colin's the only guy we've got in our team. So I'm really proud of that. And all those artists a very strong female. So I think that's something that we're good at, or Kat's good at especially, and Claire, of course.
I mean, some of the acts have been on the roster for decades, haven't they? So, I mean, what's the secret to a good artist-manager relationship?
I think it's just building the right relationship. It's hard to, I mean, for example, with Badly Drawn Boy, Damon, I've worked with him since 1998, I think it is. So, yeah, and it's just, he's lovely. He's not, artists are never necessarily easy, but he's just a lovely person, and he's been through a lot. He will talk about it, so I can talk about it. You know, he's been through alcoholism, and he's 11 years sober, which is the thing I'm most proud about, as well as his fantastic music. Our oldest client is Youth, the producer. Who actually we started working. I think we started in our first year, so we've been managing him for 40 years, which is incredible. And he is just the most amazing guy. And I'm going to plug his forthcoming book, which I think will be out next year, which is absolutely brilliant. He's done a sort of album by album thing of the artists he's worked with, and it's done in his sort of style, and he's very sort of poetic and very articulate. It's going to be a really good book.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And are you friends with your artists, would you say? Or is it strictly business?
Oh, I think it's friends with some of them, yeah.
I think it's such a hard balance to strike, because it's really important for them to trust you, and it's really important for you to remember that it is a business relationship, and your job is to advise them on you know, all elements of their business. But obviously, you know, we work in an industry where we're often traveling with them, we're out late at night with them. Like, it is really important to get on, but also that they can trust that you're a safe pair of hands. So you have to maintain a level of professionalism, and sometimes you have to remember that, like, they're not your friends principally. That's not what you are to them. But, you know, I think when we've worked with people for such a long time, it's impossible for it not to become, you know, more than just a business relationship, you know. And when you go through things in your life as you get older, you know, I'm incredibly grateful for the support that my clients have given me over the last couple of years when I went through a very difficult time when I lost my husband. And, you know, you can't just keep things strictly business because life gets in the way. But, you know, I think it is important for us to make sure that we maintain that balance, and that, like, if it is getting too close, you have to you have to be a little bit careful that you know, just to maintain your objectivity sometimes. But certainly being friendly and being friends is important as well.
Do
you disagree with your artists?
Yeah,
I think
not always, obviously, but
I think Jazz and I, we would disagree with our artists, which maybe is why we've.
Jazz disagreed with most people, to be fair.
Yeah, but I think it was always, certain things, creative stuff. If we felt an artist was making a big mistake, we'd say, look, that isn't the right single, and I think sometimes that made the artist maybe go somewhere else. But usually they sold less records when they went somewhere else than they did with us. So.
I think it's really important to build enough of a relationship of trust that if there is something where you feel you do disagree with them, that they will at least listen. And that's all I ask for. Like, you know, ultimately it's the artist's business, it's their music, it's up to them, and you have to trust the people that make the music. But, you know, our job is to advise them, and sometimes that does involve having difficult conversations and saying things that maybe at that time is not what they want to hear. But if you just say yes and agree to everything, then you're both not going to achieve the best that you can achieve.
I think for us, especially sort of going back from the beginning, it was all about making records, and as managers we were very sort of A&R orientated. You know, for example, with Lisa Stansfield, the first two albums, which were the big albums, we were genuine executive producers. You know, we helped them make the records and make them sound more contemporary than maybe they would have done if we'd have just left them. So things like that was always our thing, was about making the music. You know, that's my background as a musician, and I did some production as well. So I was always, and so was Jazz, we were always involved in the music. So if there was a creative difference with the music, then we would say what we felt, because it just seemed crazy not to. Yeah. Sometimes it works against us.
Well, there's less of that in the business these days, though, isn't there? But anyway, let's talk about you two. Now, you came into the industry at different times and in different ways. I'm going to start with you, Tim, because you, as you say, you were an artist. You were in Blue Zoo.
I had a band called The Crooks, which was like a mod band. So I sort of followed the trends, and that sort of evolved into Blue Zoo, which was, I don't know, they called it sort of new romantic, but we didn't have a synthesizer, which was interesting in those days. But that was, and we signed to Magnet with like Lord Levy as the boss, and Steve Cutner was there, and Safta Jaffrey was there, the late Safta Jaffrey. It was interesting times, but we worked with Tim Freeze-Green on an album, which was very interesting. Tim Pope did one of our videos, which was so scary that we couldn't get it onto kids' TV. I did the artist thing. I did a lot of the songwriting, but I was never that. Looking back, I think I just sort of was a bit of a magpie. I'd sort of go with what was happening and make records that sounded a bit like someone else's records. Looking back, and I think for me the turning point was opening for U2 at the Marquee Club in, I think, maybe 83 or 84. I think it was their second visit to the UK, to England, as it were. So, yeah, that was, and they were so good. And it was like, I think maybe a light bulb moment. I thought, no, maybe I'm not going to make this as an artist, you know. And they, you know, it was just like watching The Edge with that guitar sound, and the whole thing was like, wow, this is about a band that's going to be massive. You just knew it. So, and I think I got married quite young and had kids young, so I had that sort of responsibility, and then I did some production, which I did because I used to book bands into the Clarendon downstairs in Hammersmith. You probably remember that. Some of the people listening might remember it. So I got to know a lot of bands coming in and out, and they sort of send me their demos, and I'd say to them, I can make a better record than that, you know. And I used to get like £50 for making a record. So I worked with people like New Model Army and Guana Bats, and I can't remember half of them. Furniture, I did a EP with them. And so I was sort of into the production thing because my background was as a musician. But I think what happened then was that technology, things like Cubase and all the sort of technology was coming in, and I just didn't. And I remember Youth saying it took him 6 months to learn all that stuff, and I just didn't really have sort of 6 months or the technical brain to get into it. So I sort of ended up managing with Jazz. We just started this thing at the time when we were both sort of at a loose end.
And did your experience as an artist, has that helped you as a manager?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've done videos. I've been on Top of the Pops a couple of times. You know, things like that. Really, you understand how boring things can be. Like, I used to hate photo sessions. I used to hate videos. It was just hanging around. So you understand the whole thing. And I think it really helped me. Definitely, it was a good sort of apprenticeship. Yeah, and I've got some songs on Spotify and things like that. So why not? You know. You
making any money from streaming? I'm going to go and stream Bluezoo when I get home, just to help you out.
I'd never joined PPL until about a year ago. I'm still in touch with the Bluezoo singer, and he said, he gets a few £100 from PPL. I thought, because back in the day, neighbouring rights was never really a thing. I've got to be honest, it was something that was pretty much ignored. So I joined PPL, and it's funny because I know Peter Latham quite well, and it was like, I thought I'll join it. So I got like £120. I was like, this is brilliant, you know. Paid for lunch, you know what I mean?
Big money. And Kat, you weren't really planning a career in the music industry, were you? A Cambridge graduate.
Well, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but it was quite late on in my university days when I suddenly thought, actually, maybe I could turn my hobby into a job. Because, I'd been doing student radio. I was the head of music at CUR 1350. I don't think it's called that anymore. But realised as I went through that I was spending a lot more time doing that than I was doing my degree. And it was a brilliant time because that was the time when record labels still had like student promotions and alternative promotions departments. So our station had a listenership of about 30 people, but we would just get so much free music, and we could go and see any gig in Cambridge we wanted to go to. And it just was absolutely brilliant. And I sort of thought, well, maybe I'll hit up some of these contacts that I've made and see if I could get some work experience. And that was what led me to the job at Big Life. I'd done an internship with a guy called Jim Fletcher, who sadly is no longer with us at what was then Sony BMG. And he became a bit of a champion for me, and he heard about this sort of entry-level role going at Big Life and said, have you thought about management? And I didn't really know what management did, didn't really know what managers did at all at that point, but I liked, as I said before, I liked the artists that were on the roster, and fortunately for me, they gave me a chance, and so that was how I started out.
Yeah, and you had a slightly unusual interview with Jazz for the job, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jazz, obviously, he didn't have a lot of time for my interview. So he looked at my CV. He insulted every single place I'd done work experience, told me they were all shit. And he didn't know why I was bothering doing that. And he said, "You went to Cambridge. Why the fuck do you want to work for me?" Which obviously took me aback a little bit. So I worked out an answer to that. And he said, "Right, fine. I'm happy if you're happy. I'll see you on Monday." And that was it.
Okay, those are the days.
Yeah, absolutely.
HR not in this interview.
Not at all. No.
For me, I had a very interesting moment with the Big Life situation. I'd started out in '86, and then I found the Soup Dragons, which was the first act that we sort of got involved in.
Great band.
We did okay with them initially. We did a deal with Muff Winwood, and he sort of funded us putting out music through Rough Trade, which was fun, and we got into the top 75, and it was all going well. In the meantime, Jazz was paying me like a very small wage to keep me going a little bit. I was also booking the bands at the Clarendon, which I think I earned £50 a week for, which is, and in those days was okay. And eventually, the money that Jazz had from Wham that he was putting into the company ran out. So I remember he was in France on holiday, and he phoned me up and said, "Tim, I think you better look for a job, because a few people are interested in me doing A&R or whatever." And I said, "Oh no, what's happened?" He said, "Well, my money's run out. I can't keep you going." So he said, "I'll see you when I'm back, and can you pick me up from the airport?" So I remember I drove to Heathrow and I put my car in the car park. In fact, I couldn't remember coming out of the arrivals. I couldn't find my car in the car park. It was like one of those huge multi-story. I couldn't find the car, and in the meantime, between Jazz phoning me from France and me picking it up in the airport, I'd been introduced to Cold Cut, because we wanted a remix for one of, I think it was like a Dance Society spin-off called Society, and they had this track, and we were looking for a remix, and a guy called Dave Lee, I hope he's still around, a lovely guy, DJ, I can't remember, he's got a DJ name which I forget, but he said, "Oh, you should talk to these guys, Cold Cut, they're really cool and up and coming." So I went to see them, and they worked above a butcher shop on the Seven Sisters Road, and they had two record decks, a very small sampler with like a really small sampling speed, as it were, and a cassette player, and they played me things like Beats and Pieces. And in the end, by the time I picked up Jazz, I said, "I found these guys, they're amazing, Cold Cut," and they had this sample track called Beats and Pieces, which had like Led Zeppelin, When the Levee Breaks drums, and all sorts of samples that were totally legal. And we ended up managing them, and that sort of changed everything, because we were a little bit down. It was going to finish, to be honest. Then it could have just been all over. And then we sort of built them up. We put out Beats and Pieces. We sold like 12,000 singles and all this sort of stuff. And then we put them together with Yaz. We did that Doctor in the House, and then they produced The Only Way Is Up. And then we put Lisa Stansfield with them for People Hold On. And then suddenly it all went crazy. And I managed to sign De La Soul in the meantime as well. So from that moment of meeting Cold Cut, which was one of those sliding doors moments, everything just went crazy. And we had three people. It was me, Jazz, and one other person working for us. And we had 3 albums in the top 40. Cold Cut's album, De La Soul, and Yaz. And it was madness. But that was the sort of moment, that's how things can change in your life. And it was just totally life-changing for me, and obviously for Jazz as well.
I hope you found your car in the end.
I did find my car in the end, luckily. But no, it was just, I keep looking back thinking, God, if I hadn't have found Cold Cut in that little 2-week window, then it might have been all over before it really started.
And you both worked with Jazz, obviously, who was one of the industry's great characters. What was it like working with him? What did you learn?
I think about management, I think we learnt a lot. He was... Jazz's front was much more different from the real person, He actually used, because he went through, he went through the whole drug-addled craziness when there was a whole incident this is before we were working together, but at the Sony conference back in early 80s, there was a whole well-known thing. I think a lot of it's in his book. Yeah, he was living it large and all that sort of stuff, and then he became totally the opposite. But he still used that sort of craziness as a sort of front. I mean, he could literally pick up the phone, be totally calm, sort of give someone a real rollicking on the phone, and just put it down again and goes, just back to normal. It was just so put on. So he used that sort of myth of Jazz to sort of get his way in certain situations, and it did work a lot. Yeah. But people especially the Americans, they really loved him. It's the American and everyone. He had his moments, but he was very well loved in the from the broader industry. Like Lucy and all these people, they're all friendly. It's like, but he was a character.
Yes, Kat, you came into it later.
Yeah,
you've heard the initial story.
Yeah, I mean, I was initially absolutely terrified of jazz, and as I sort of got to learn what management was, I found him, really impressive, but also a bit like, I can't see myself doing that. Like I didn't see it as aspirational at that time, because I just felt like the way that he did things was so different to how I am, that I was like, I can't really see how I could be a manager if this is what managers are. Like I loved how much he cared about his artists and how he would absolutely like fight to the death for them. But like, he liked having arguments with people. I'm not very argumentative. It's not really my style. And, it took me a while to kind of learn that, like, I could take inspiration from a lot of what he'd done and actually kind of go, maybe there's a different way that is my way of doing it. And, it probably took me about 10 years before I started to actually think that it might be possible for me to be a manager myself. But, one of the amazing things about jazz was once you'd earned his respect, like he was 100% in your corner, and he was always just incredibly supportive of me. He always said everyone at Big Life is in A&R. I always felt like I could bring him something if there was a new artist I was excited about, like whatever level of the company I was at, and that wasn't just me. And so it was terrifying to start with, but once we sort of began to understand each other, like he and I ended up having a really good working relationship, and a lot of trust by the end. And one of the absolute privileges of my life was helping him out with his book and proofreading that and getting that out there. And if you can get hold of a copy of it, it's amazing. It's got some incredible stories in it.
Yeah, it's an essential reading for anyone in the music industry.
I mean, I think our relationship was very sort of yin and yang with very different personalities. I wasn't really a shouter, and I think it just,
but we didn't need to be. Did you?
I didn't need to be. He did all the shouting, but I think it obviously it worked very well, and I think it was that the sort of partnership can work, and I think you have to bury your ego a little bit when you work with Jazz. He'll fill a room up, and you've got a little space in the corner. But as long I was quite happy because I just wanted to do the work with great artists. Very lucky to work with the people we work with, and enjoy it, even if most people thought it was all about him.
Yeah, and obviously he's very sadly passed away in 2015, I think it was. But I mean, that must have been obviously a difficult time personally, but also for the company. I guess you had to think about how you were going to carry on.
Yeah, I remember being with him quite close to when he died. There was a point where he didn't want any visitors, but the last time I saw him, it was like he said, "We did quite well, didn't we?" I think I remember him saying that. It was quite emotional, but he would have loved us. He wanted us to carry on. That's no doubt about it. And then what happened with me was after that happened, I got Kat and Colin and Claire and said, "Look, you guys, you could take your artists and go. There's no reason you haven't got to stay. There's no contractual stuff. It's all about art. Management's all about the relationship between the manager and the artist on the sort of at that level." And I said, "Look, you can either stay and we'll keep the company going, we'll build it up again, or you can go." And they decided they wanted to stay together. And in the meantime, I got approached by a couple of, maybe not that long afterwards, I got approached by Annette Barrett, who you obviously know Annette very well. She's a lovely person, great music person, about would I be interested in doing a deal for the publishing company, because Jazz had left me part of the publishing company. And I said, "Oh yeah, that it sounds interesting." I thought I might as well have a partner. I've had a partner all the time, so why not have another partner? I'm not like greedy or anything. So I thought that could be a good partnership. And then they approached me about the management company. So we sort of did a deal for both, and they've been incredibly supportive, and I've got no regrets at all. And they support Kat and Colin and Claire and the whole team, and they've been a joy to work with, to be honest. They've got a lot of patience. Obviously, not long after the pandemic, we had to deal with the pandemic, which we managed to get through and not lose any staff, which I was very proud of, because that was, can you imagine no live income coming in? But we managed to make that work. So that's where we are, and I'm very pleased to manage to keep it going and sort of pass the baton on to to these amazing younger people. I used to be young people, and actually younger people, Kat and Colin and Claire, who are just doing great stuff, you know?
Yeah, great stuff. And so you've made it to 40 years. What do you need to do to make sure Big Life's still here in another 40 years?
Well, you know, I think as Tim says, it's, you know, it's a lot about great artists and great music, but, you know, also looking at other areas to expand into. And, you know, one of the things that we're really excited about is we're going to launch Big Life podcasts. Colin's been working with a podcast called Football Cliches. You know, he got on board to kind of help them with the live side of their business. So, you know, bringing his expertise from the music industry to a podcast. So working with them on live and sponsorship and merch and branding. And that's been such a great relationship that he's decided he wants to, you know, expand that into other podcasts. So, you know, it's always about looking where we can sort of use the skills that we've learned in, you know, the company's history and all of our experience and take that to things that are, you know, growth areas of the business, both music and otherwise.
I'll have to give him a call, but
no, feel free.
Tim, you've been doing this for a long time. Any thoughts of retirement? Or?
I'm pretty much there, to be honest. I'm around. I still work closely with Badly Drawn Boy and a bit with the Future Heads, and yeah, I'm just sort of there. And obviously with Youth, who's got, I think I mentioned he's got a wonderful book coming out. So I'm sort of around, but it was a moment that happened. We were managing a certain artist, and then that stopped, and then I sort of had this vacuum. I thought, well, I don't really want to fill the vacuum for the sake of it. I was 70 this year, so it's like, you know, I'll do some other things. I'm on the board of Music Declares Emergency charity. I'm a trustee on that, which has been interesting, and I've got some people involved that I think, you know, I'm there because I know people that not necessarily the other trustees know, because I'm old and I know got these connections with certain people and certain companies. So yeah, I'm doing some work for that, and I know they're involved with Earth Percent. Actually helped fund that charity. Sorry, not a company. Yeah,
great organisation. Yeah. You're going to join the Blue Zoo reunion?
It's funny, they got together quite a few years ago and I said I can't do it, so they got someone else in. I went to see a show, which is really strange, seeing a show, a band that you sort of wrote the songs for. And there were some songs I can't remember writing that song. It was just very strange. I enjoyed it. The guitarist was a lot better than me, I've got to say.
Fair enough. And I guess, Kat, that means you've got the responsibility for taking the company forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, what an honour and a privilege to be able to sort of spearhead the next phase of the company. I really appreciate, you know, all the support and inspiration that Tim has given to me and all the other team, and just the trust that he's put in us to, you know, to keep the name going and keep the company going. And, you know, as Tim says, Reservoir have been incredible partners. It's been a huge learning curve for me since becoming managing director, you know, just, you know, running all the operations of the company and reporting back to Reservoir and making sure that we run things in a, you know, slightly more sort of maybe a little bit more organised way than perhaps Tim and Jazz did it previously. I think they did everything on gut feeling, whereas now I have to do like financial projections and stuff like that. But it's good.
It was Jazz was always sort of back of a cigarette packet sort of deals, you know, or on a napkin or something like that. I mean, one thing we had success with a label, and we sold half the label to what was then Polygram, now Universal, and so they sort of funded us and everything else, but. It took 3 years for them to sort of get us a CFO. So we'd had nobody checking what we were doing. And literally, I mean, no one really talks about this, but we just signed everything. I mean, we just went crazy. And we had a lot of hits, you know, we had The Orb, we got the Soup Dragons gold album in America, 2 gold albums in America. And we did well in terms of charts and all this sort of stuff. We had a lot of hits, but we were like kids in a candy shop. And, you know, we signed things that were totally obscure, like Bobby Valentino, the guy that played the violin on Bluebells, you know. It was like, he was this artist that looked like Clark Gable, and he played this sort of country and western type stuff. So we put out his album. I mean, we did all sorts of things that were just completely crazy, but we did have a lot of fun.
Well, that's the point of it all, isn't it? But thanks, Kat and Tim. Please stick around. Latest or greatest is coming right up. And if you're enjoying The Money Trench, supported by SOUNDON and TIXEL, please give us a rating or review on your podcast platform of choice, as it really does help us keep making this podcast. But now it's time for our quickfire round with our guests, Kat Kennedy and Tim Parry of Big Life. Kat and Tim, this is called Latest or Greatest. You can decide to talk about either the most recent or the all-time best music biz thing that you've experienced in these categories. And we start with the latest or greatest record that you've bought.
I'm going to go latest, and I haven't even bought it yet, but I'm going to do it straight after this. I'm going to pop to Rough Trade East and get the new Phoebe Bridgers record.
Fantastic record.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it in full yet because I gather it's griefy, and I've got to be a bit careful about when I listen to griefy records, but I love her. I think she's an amazing artist. You know, I think I love the vibe of this record, the artwork and everything. So yeah, so I'm going to go and get that on vinyl, definitely.
Nice one. Tim?
So, and as a new artist, yeah, Phoebe Bridgers would be for me as well. But I recently bought, which isn't available on streaming, which is great because I'm a massive Bruce Springsteen fan. So I recently bought, there's a triple CD of him at Asbury Park from 2024, which is absolutely brilliant. And the live album, I listened to it. I had an afternoon on my own at home. I just listened to the whole 3 CDs. It's brilliant. And he plays a lot of old songs that he hasn't played for years. Things like Growing Up. And yeah, it was brilliant. So yeah, that's my greatest.
Okay, 2 excellent choices. The latest or greatest gig or festival that you've been to. I'm sure this is a tough one.
Yeah, this is really tough. But since we're recording this on the day that everyone gets their GCSE results, it took me right back to getting mine and then going straight off to the Leeds Festival in 2000, which was absolutely amazing. I mean, what a lineup. It was incredible, but it was definitely a rite of passage at that time. You'd go and get your results and then go off and camp. It was the first festival that my parents had ever let me camp at. And it was just absolutely amazing. I saw Elliott Smith, which was incredible. It was, yeah, just a great lineup, amazing weekend. Yeah. Slipknot fans burnt all the Portaloos on the last night.
Yes, classic Slipknot fan thing to do. But this year they don't get to go straight to Reading. Got to wait a week. But,
I know, it's rubbish. Yeah. What are they going to do? Maybe they're all going to Green Man instead.
Maybe. Probably not.
Not quite the same.
Probably not, I don't think. That's not a place for a feral 16-year-old. But Tim?
Well, greatest gig?
Yeah,
I've been, one of the good things about being old, you've seen a lot of great gigs in the time. It's hard. I mean, Bruce would definitely be up there, but I remember The Who with Keith Moon playing like the Lyceum, and wow. Yeah. Recently, David Byrne, his show is unbelievable. We went to Hammersmith and saw him. That's my recent gig that was incredible.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
It was amazing. Did you see American Utopia was brilliant, and we were worried that he wouldn't be able to follow that up with the next show, but he did. It was just superb.
Yeah, fair play. Your latest or greatest music biz boss?
Oh, this is easy for me because I've only had 2.
So
I've got to go for Jazz and Tim. You know, as he says, yin and yang, the amazing partnership. I learned so much, and I'm still learning so much from Tim. So yeah, I've been very fortunate to have 2 incredible bosses.
Very diplomatic choice. That should seal the next performance review.
No, she reviews herself now. You see, that's.
I've never had a performance review, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, good that some semblance of the old chaotic Big Life is still here. But how about you, Tim?
I've never really had a boss, have I? I've been lucky to sort of work for myself for the whole time. We did have a relationship with Roger Ames at Polygram, which was interesting. It involved at one point he would sit there having these meetings telling us that we were terrible, and he'd be throwing a cricket ball back from hand to hand. So the next meeting, Jazz comes in with a cricket bat. That's a little story. I've got plenty of those stories, but maybe another time. But yeah, I thought so. He was an interesting boss. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there was a time when artist managers were expected to carry a cricket bat, wasn't there? But we won't delve into that too much. But the latest or greatest mistake that you've made?
This one's really tough. I mean, you learn every day in this business, and so you learn from all the mistakes as well as the successes. I mean, the ones that stick in my mind are early on in my career, like things that I did wrong for Jazz when I was his PA. Like those are the ones that still strike fear into my heart. You know, booking the wrong hotel or things like that. But you know what? I learned so much from doing that. You know, it's all taught me that attention to detail is very important as a manager.
Okay, fair enough. Tim,
I think
do you make mistakes?
Yeah, definitely. I've touched on it earlier. I think it's once you had some success, believing that everything you touched was going to work, and we went through that. As I say, luckily it wasn't our money that we spent. Although we have spent our money on things that didn't work. But yeah, I think it was that feeling of invincibility that was totally misrepresented in reality. But yeah, anyway.
Okay, good stuff. The latest or greatest artist that you've worked with?
This is really, really hard. I mean, it's like choosing from your children, isn't it? Choosing your favourite child. I mean, I'm gonna sort of cheat and say that my current roster are all the greatest, and they're all incredible humans, amazing artists, and I feel really, really proud and fortunate to say that I'm their manager. And I don't have a favourite, but I would like to use this opportunity to shout out We Are Scientists, because, you know, when Tim talks about sliding doors moments, you know, when they approached me in 2017, asking if I'd be interested in having a conversation about management, it was the first time that someone I loved, you know, I loved that band so much, and they came and wanted to speak to me rather than Big Life, you know. And Tim and I had done a lot of stuff together, but that was the first one where it felt like it was actually me that they wanted to talk to, and like that really gave me the confidence to go, okay, you can actually do this, you could be a manager, and the fact that I'm still working with them today, you know, almost 10 years later, is just wonderful.
Yeah, fantastic. Tim, you've worked with far too many artists to say all of them, so
no, I mean, in terms of talent, obviously Richard Ashcroft, I mean, Gary Lightbody, obviously Lisa Stansfield was a wonderful artist. Obviously, because of the longevity, I think Damon Gough, Badly Drawn Boy, is very special for me. I think he's incredibly talented, a little bit underrated maybe, wonderful songwriter. Yeah, you know, I think because I'm still working with him, I think that feels like the right answer.
Yeah, and so obviously a lot of those acts you broke, including Badly Drawn Boy. What was it like when all those artists were sort of coming through and becoming massive?
Oh, it was, the Verve thing was incredible, because they put out 2 albums. We got involved because they decided to work with youth. And one of my favourite moments of my career was I went to meet with Richard and Simon Jones, the bass player, and we went to Youth's little studio in his basement in Brixton, and Richard there was an old guitar there, it was a bit sort of out of tune. Richard said, can I play you a couple of songs? And picked up the guitar and he played Lucky Man and Drugs Don't Work, and it was one of those hair on the back of your neck moments. I thought, oh God. And we weren't managing him at the time. I was just there representing Youth to work with them. And then they fired their manager in the middle of the session. Youth phones up and said, Jazz, come down, you've got to come down and got to meet this band. And that was it. The rest is history, to quote one of their songs. But no, that was a moment. And I'm very privileged to work with them, although it was very volatile at times.
I can imagine. But the latest or greatest music industry party that you've been to?
Oh, we're a bit rubbish for this because neither of us are really party people. I've got when I first, pretty much when I just started working with Skunk Nancy, I was in New York for a We Are Scientists show, and I went for a drink with Skin, and we were chatting about, she's a DJ as well, and we were chatting about sort of her kind of DJ career, and she kind of took one look at me and she went, "You're not really a party girly, are you?" Which was completely fair, and she was right. So I feel like because I missed the 80s and the 90s, I feel like I've missed the main kind of party era, but we did both go to that insane beggars party last year. So I have to shout that out.
Did you go?
Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
Well, that was like the old days, wasn't it?
It was so well done. I mean, they spent like 1.7 million. The Badly Drawn Boy played a couple of songs there, and he did comment that he said they wish they'd spent more money on his marketing budget and less on this party. So anyway, that's another story.
Separate budget, Damon, separate budget.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
And we can't let you go without giving us a new music tip. I'm guessing you're still listening to lots of new music, the pair of you. Anything exciting?
Yeah, I mean, am I allowed to do one of ours? I know everybody does.
You can do yours. Of course you can.
We've got a fantastic new singer-songwriter, an Irish singer-songwriter who's just moved to London called Isaac Butler, that Colin here is managing. We're really excited about him. He's an incredible storyteller, and we think he's a real classic artist in the making.
Good. Tim?
Yeah, another one of our very few new artists, a guy called Luke Champion. He's a sort of producer, works with different singers, totally different music from Isaac, but he's really talented. I think he's got a track that's streaming really well at the moment, and that's another one of Colin's new acts. But yeah, he's really, really talented.
Fantastic. Well, we will check both of those out, but that sadly is all we have time for. So Big thank you to our guests, Kat Kennedy and Tim Parry at Big Life. Thanks very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
The Money Trench, the music industry podcast with me, Mark Sutherland, is supported by SOUNDON on TIXEL and in support of Earth%. It's produced by Take Notes and exec produced by Mike Walsh, with huge thanks to Sennheiser and The Fourth Pillar. The Money Trench music is by the brilliant Tom A. Smith, and to get in touch with us, please email mike@themoneytrench.com. The summer is almost over, but there's still stuff happening if you're back at your workstation. The All About Music conference is on in India. It's the Kerrang Summer Party. Secretly's 30th anniversary festival starts. All Points East, The Wake, Forwards and the mighty Reading and Leeds festivals are all here, and there are big gigs for Turnstile, Adela, Ariana Grande, ASAP Rocky and Jack White, and it will take a Seven Nation army to hold TMT back from releasing another brand new episode on Monday, August the 31st. Yes, we're here on the bank holiday, starring another music industry legend. We will see you then. Kat and Tim, thanks for coming on the show, and see you at the Big Life 40th anniversary party.
Oh, definitely.
Is it going to be better than the Beggars one?
No.
It'll be different.
Excellent. Cheers.